I was born in Murray, Utah on February 15, 1960. My family and I were avid outdoors folk, and I grew up camping, fishing, hunting, hiking and horsepacking throughout the Uinta Basin and the Strawberry Valley, among many other locations throughout the western states. In an interview with our Ghost Radio's Denise Blauschek in 2006, George Knapp makes a statement that Utah may be among the most paranormal regions on Earth. Possibly. I know I and my family and friends have, in the presence of witnesses, experienced some very odd things through the years. The Uinta Strawberry region is host to some of the most beautiful country in the world, with dense pine and quaking oak forests carpeting steep rolling hills beneath towering granite peaks. Crystal fresh rivers tumble through glacier-carved canyons and valleys. In those early years, that region of Utah was pristine and wild, teeming in abundance with wildlife and natural resources. One could horseback into Granddaddy Lake, Moon Lake or Mary Lake and not see another human for many days. Today that's all changed, with the corporate exploitation of resources and commercial and residential real estate potential. But up through the 1970s, the Uinta Mountains were still considered primitive. It was in this region that several odd events occurred in my presence or in the presence of my parents and grandparents. One such event occurred in 1975, while my mom and dad and grandfather were driving up to Strawberry Reservoir early one morning to spend the day fishing. Strawberry Reservoir is southwesterly of the Uinta Mountains, but still well within the same region of strangeness. It was in the twilight hours of a pre-dawn Saturday morning when, while driving along the old road to Charlie's Camp, a small trailer park with a bait shop and cafe, that my father saw a large greenish cigar-shaped object slowly meandering just above the tree line above Strawberry Ridge some 3 miles southeast. He slowed the car and casually commented, "Look, there's a UFO." My mother and grandfather also saw it and watched as it slipped silently through the air until it settled down behind the ridge, not to be seen again. That evening, after returning from fishing, they were eager to tell me all about it. I was 15 at the time, and should mention that our family had often experienced paranormal events, and we enjoyed sharing the experiences we encountered. It was just one more event from hundreds through the years. During the winter months, Strawberry Reservoir is frozen over. I and a friend would often go ice fishing or rabbit hunting during these months because literally no one was around. One weekend evening, while relaxing in the trailer after dinner, we began to hear strange deep booming sounds that sounded like distant thunder, except that we could feel the reverberation in our bones. We went outside into the frigid night air to determine where it was coming from. We thought an unexpected storm was coming, and if so, we needed to leave so as not to get snowed in. The sky, however, was crystal clear with brilliant stars so close you could almost touch them. Nowhere on the horizon could we see any flashes of lightning, and yet the booming continued. Our small trailer was parked beside the lake about 50 feet from the shoreline. We finally determined that the sound was coming from the lake itself, which had an eerie glow from the overhead starlight. After listening for about 10 minutes, we decided that the booming sound must somehow be caused by the pressure of the ice formation on the lake. Perhaps it was buckling and cracking under pressure as the night became colder and thus caused a strange muffled booming sound through the water beneath. Satisfied with this theory, and becoming quite frozen ourselves, we went back to the warmth of the trailer where we broke out our guitars and spent the rest of the evening rehearsing for a performance at school the following week. The booming was eventually filtered from our subconscious and we slept soundly. Then, around 2 a.m., we both awoke with a start as a very loud boom thundered in the air. This time we not only felt it in our bones, but it actually rocked the trailer. Thinking someone was outside playing tricks on us, we each grabbed a rifle, went out through the door into darkness. We were, after all, presumably alone, and no one back home would come looking for us for at least 3 or 4 days. It wasn't uncommon to skip a few days of school if we were having fun. Our immediate thought was that someone might want to rob us or worse. Standing out in the moonless night air, everything felt oddly quiet. The booming had stopped, and there was not a sound to be heard but our own breathing and the crunching of ice beneath our shoes as we walked. We listened for the same sound of crunching ice from someone else who might be playing the games on us. Suddenly, we heard a strange sound coming from farther up the lake shore, as if someone were driving a big four-wheel drive half on the land and half in the frozen water. It was a cracking and whooshing sound, and it was growing louder every second. Whatever it was seemed to be heading our way, and yet we could see nothing where the pale edge of the dim glowing lake met the blackness of the land. Within moments the sound was upon us, and both I and my friend nearly ran screaming back inside the trailer. Then, just before entering the trailer, we saw what was making the noise, A decent-sized wave had been forcing itself up the ice-covered shoreline, buckling and splitting the ice as it did. The escaping water pushed some 10 to 12 feet onto the land as it passed. We stood in silent amazement at the sight, both of us wondering the same thing. What the hell caused that? The sound of the wave continued eastward until it could be heard no more. As we openly pondered the cause, we noticed that the ice on the lake itself was moving in a strange way. It rose gently and rhythmically, and was so stealth that it would have gone unnoticed if not for the faint glow of starlight reflecting from its uneven surface. For as far as we could see out onto the ice-covered lake, there seemed to be a subtle undulation. My friend said, "It must have been an earthquake." That made a lot sense and would probably also explain the booming sounds heard all evening and into the night, the pressure building up before releasing. Seismic activity may account for the booming and the rolling wave up the shoreline. But as we stood talking about it, we noticed a bright area seemingly under the ice far out in the middle of the lake towards the south of us. It was just barely noticeable against the pale glow of starlight on the ice, but was nonetheless brighter than the surrounding ice. We didn't comment on it until a few minutes had passed, when the odd glow had seemed to be moving farther south. It was as if something luminescent was moving just beneath the ice at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We had barely decided that it must be the crest of perhaps another wave moving away from us when the odd glow suddenly turned east and picked up speed before fading out altogether. Frozen to the bone, and hardly able to talk through our chattering teeth, we chalked the whole experience up to an earthquake. Nothing more happened that night, although we stayed up the rest of the night talking about the event and scaring ourselves silly with tales we'd heard about a submerged town beneath the water and the ghost of one resident who refused to leave his home when the dam was built. Eventually he was drowned. But on the anniversary of his death he returns to the surface riding upon an ancient wooden church steeple, which had been the highest point he could reach before the waters consumed him. We were 18 at the time and of course easily impressionable, but while no ghost of a drowned man riding a church steeple ever appeared that night, or ever to my knowledge, there was certainly a strange booming sound, a freak wave through the ice and a strange moving glow beneath it. The state expanded the reservoir many years ago and Charlie's camp as we knew it is long gone, now also beneath the water. I wonder if any of you might have had similar experiences in the Strawberry Reservoir area, or maybe elsewhere. If so, share them in the comments below.